Alright, I'm going to take a look at the final drive Freecoaster, show you the parts inside it, how to take it apart. If you need more information, bottom of the box has all the instructions. Since it's got a bushing driver, it's a little different than your typical Freecoaster, taking it apart and putting it back together. What you need a cone wrench, 21mm, adjustable, some Allen keys. And it's good to have some paper towels around too. First thing we'll do is pull off the axle nuts. Get them out of the way, at least on the drive side for now. And then we'll take the cone nuts off for the driver. You need to use a cone wrench on this. If not, if you try to just do it with a wrench, you're going to end up messing up the hardware. So put the cone wrench on the inner cone, hold that still, use an adjustable on the outer, and then loosen just the outer one. Unthread it, and unthread both. Alright, now that the cone nuts are out, you could pull the driver out. This one, so you have to you twist it. This is a left-hand drive hub, so you just turn it and it'll push it out, disengage it from the clutch inside. As you can see, the diamond driver, it's all bushings, no little teeny tiny bearings inside in there that tend to blow up and destroy the Freecoaster real quick. Having it all bushings in there means it'll last forever. The driver is guaranteed for life, not to fail. Next, take non-drive side hardware off. Now, at this point, if you wanted to just take the axle out, you could without taking out this hardware, but we'll show you how to do it anyway. You need to hold the axle. You need an 8mm Allen key. If you got the original axle, the newer ones have a 6mm broach. If you have a trifecta, it's got you covered either way. So put that in there, hold it still, use your adjustable again, and just pop off the hardware and unthread it. Now, inside non-drive side hardware, you can see it a little bit right there. There's this little spacer, this steel spacer, goes against the aluminum of the hardware and the bearing. But if you're going to put on a Merritt non-drive side hub guard, you keep this spacer and you keep that in between the hub guard and the bearing, and that provides the proper spacing for that. Now, to get the axle out, put an axle nut back on to protect the threads a little bit, and you're going to want to push it out towards the non-drive side. If you try banging it towards the driver's side, you're going to just destroy it. Just take it, get the axle nut to protect the threads, and just give it a good few whacks, and it'll pop the axle and bearing out together. Take the axle nut back off. There's the hub shell, and here's the axle. Just the bearing. Everything's usually got a good coating of grease. Right here, it's the spacers that come with the hub. It's set up so it's got full slack, which most of the guys on the team like. And the clutch will back up against the thrust bearing there. So how this works, the clutch is here. And when the clutch is fully disengaged, having it back up against a thrust washer instead of just a bunch of regular washers, it allows it to spin freer, and makes it a little smoother, and definitely helps with kick flips as well. I'll give you everything together. This is kind of how it looks, just so you see. bit of a setup. And now we'll just put everything back together. Start with the clutch, drop it back inside, take the bearing, put it back on the non-drive side of the axle, the spacer for the hardware, thread the hardware on there, and drop it inside. And I'm going to put an axle nut on here again to protect everything. To help line things up, let's throw the driver on. Alright, should be good enough for right now. Take the axle nut off. Now before we put the drive side hardware back on, let's just make sure the drive side hardware is nice and tight. Alright, that's good. Now, what you want to do, disengage the clutch from the hub shell and push the driver all the way in. Put the inner cone nut in first. The surface that goes against the driver bushing is slightly smaller than the outside. Thread that on first. You want to thread it and touch it until it just about makes contact. Well, until it makes contact with the driver. Just finger tight, and then turn it back about a quarter turn, maybe a little less, but about a quarter turn. Then you're going to put on the outer cone nut. Thread that all the way in. At this point, you have to be careful that the inner cone nut, its relationship to the axle doesn't rotate anymore on the axle. It stays the same. So get that in there. So it turned a little bit. Get it back. Just snug it up with your fingers a little. Then to tighten it properly, this is when you need a cone wrench again. Take your 21mm cone wrench, put it on the inner cone, take your adjustable, put it on the outer, and make sure the inner one doesn't turn. Then snug down the outer one nice and tight. And then you're good. Good to go. There'll be a little teeny tiny amount of play in there, but that just keeps it from bonding up. If you don't use the cone wrench, what ends up happening when you tighten the outer one, you'll turn the inner one. It'll tighten down against the driver, bind up against it, and everything will feel terrible. It'll be really hard to pedal. Put the axle nuts back on. And you're good to go. If you need any more info, there's the detailed instructions on the back of the box and also on the website. And should be set. Keep rolling smooth for a long time.